Comrades and friends, I am not attending Visakhapatnam CIT All India Conference due to the poor health of my wife. Therefore, I continue with the Global Weekly News. Global Weekly News, serial number 184. First, People's Victories in 2025. 2025 was not all defeats. Despite relentless attacks led by the far-right administration of US President Donald Trump and his allies on the people of the world, the people resisted and fought back. Here are some of the key people's victories in 2025. People's victories and rays of hope in 2025. A non-exhaustive list of progressive advances across the world. First, we go to Venezuela. Despite unsanctioned airstrikes against fishing boats and extrajudicial killings, illegal seizures of oil tankers, and constant threats of military action, the people of Venezuela continue to stand firm against US imperialism and attacks on the South American country. Second, we go to Kerala. In November, the left-ruled state of Kerala became the first state in India to eradicate extreme poverty. For years, the state government and local self-government bodies formulated and implemented specific and targeted efforts to bridge gaps of access to the families in extreme poverty. The efforts were only possible due to extensive coordination between the state government and local bodies. Next, we go to Palestine. The people of the world continue to stand with Palestine. The movement for Palestine liberation, for an end of the Israeli occupation and genocide, continues to grow. Workers paralyzed several ports and countries with strikes. Several flotillas, flotilla means a group of ships, deported to break the seas of Gaza, and millions of people mobilized all over the world in solidarity with the Palestine, free Palestine. Next we go to Sahel Alliance, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. The members of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, of Africa, continue their fight against colonialism and imperialism. The AES launched a unified military force, came out of the International Criminal Court, condemning it as an imperialist tool, and established a Sahelian Criminal and Human Rights Court, all the while implementing policies to decrease poverty, promote sovereign economic development, and rebuild a sense of national pride and dignity among the people of the region long dominated by Western neocolonialism. Next we go to Nepal. Following the mass protests which forced the resignation of the left-center government in September, 10 left parties have united in Nepal to create the Nepali Communist Party. The party will seek to address the grievances of the young people in the country and has received hope in the left's electoral presence, revived hopes in the left's electoral presence in the upcoming national elections in March 2026. Comrades, Latin America. A report released this year, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, shows that the poverty in Latin America is at its lowest since the organization began recording data. However, this reduction is not even. Mexico and Brazil, ruled by progressive governments, accounted for 90% of the decline in poverty. Let us see what Comrade Lenin has said. Capitalism has triumphed all over the world, but this triumph is only the prelude to the triumph of labor over capital. Next, comrades, stronger farmers movement in Tanzania. Over 670 farmers gathered in Morogoro, Tanzania on December 4 to 5 to chart a course for the future of National Network of Farmers Groups in Tanzania. The occasion was 30th Annual General Meeting, which serves as the highest democratic platform for members to voice their aspirations for the organization's future. The meeting began with the slogan, "The defender of the farmer is the farmer." Local cultural groups performed vibrantly. On the opening day, National Chairperson and Executive Director stressed the urgent need for solutions rooted in farmer-farmer solidarity and a clear understanding of the peasant's role in Tanzania. The farmers are the primary food producers, yet earn a pittance even from valuable cash crops like coffee and cashews. At the same time, agri-business and middlemen reap huge profits. The crisis affects every phase of agriculture, whether it be synthetic fertilizers or seeds. 4 or 5 companies control the market. The chairperson emphasized the commitment of delegates, many of whom traveled vast distances, some over 2,000 kilometers, and financed their own attendance, was a key organizational milestone. This commitment, where farmers use their own resources and do not depend on the organization for travel, signifies genuine self-reliance and a deep sense of ownership. Farmers consider their organization as a weapon to fight for their rights. For over 30 years, the organization has organized farmers to practice self-reliance. Networks of farmers assist each other in seed development, getting better prices for their crops, building markets, enabling saving schemes, and resist efforts to take away their land. From farmers cultivating rice and maize to pineapples, bananas and mangoes, and spices like cinnamon and cloves, the organization, through a process of popular consultation, come up with strategies for all. The annual general body meeting had a rigorous debate on establishing the organization's own financial institution capable of providing loans at affordable, reasonable rates. The organization's radio station serves a vital tool for highlighting farmers' voices, unlike the mainstream media, which ignores the present agenda. Third item, comrades. China imposes sanctions on dozens of US weapons manufacturers. Most of the countries, including United States, recognize People's Republic of China as the only China. Contrary to this commitment, and despite Chinese repeated warnings, the US announced a fresh $1,100 crore deal to supply weapons to Taiwan earlier in December. On 26th December, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced sanctions against the US weapons manufacturing companies and their high-level officials over arms sales to Taiwan. The 20 weapons manufacturing firms sanctioned by China include companies like Northrop Grumman Corporation, L3 Harris Maritime Services, and Boeing. At least 10 senior executives related to these firms have also been sanctioned. Chinese individuals and firms are prohibited from engaging or doing business with these companies or individuals. The sanctioned executives are not allowed to visit China, Hong Kong, and Macau. Macau is the island of China. China has traditionally maintained that Taiwan is an integral part of its territory. Chinese Foreign Affairs Ministry reiterated that the first red line that must not be crossed in China-US relations is on the Taiwan question. Chinese government and its people have the ability to safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Fourth item, comrades, Honduras. Almost a month after the elections were held in Central American country, Honduras, the Election Commission announced the results. Candidate of the far-right National Party of Honduras, Nasri Aspura, won by getting 40.27% of the votes. He defeated the former Vice President Salvador Nasrullah of the Liberal Party of Honduras, who polled 39.53% votes. In third place is the former minister and candidate for the leftist Liberty and Refoundation Party, Libre, Ritzy Moncada, with 19.19% votes. Several politicians have stated that electoral fraud has taken place. Among the critics are members of the Election Commission itself, such as Marlo Oko, who serves as senior advisor. He said, the final declaration of the presidential election was made without completing the vote count and without even having resolved the complaints and demands for a recount. US and the allied with organized crime want a president who responds to their interests, regardless of whether he emerges from an electoral coup. Honduras will only be free, sovereign and independent only when Hondurans are the masters of their own destiny. Fifth item, this is not a ceasefire. The Israeli genocide continues. Comrade Vijay Prasad. On 19th January 2025, a ceasefire took effect to halt the Israeli bombing of Palestinians in Gaza. This ceasefire emerged from a mediation process by Egypt, Qatar and the United States, which had been sealed in June 2024 with the UN Security Council Resolution 2735. However, the Israelis rejected the agreement and waited until Trump won the US presidential election to proceed so that Trump could take credit for the deal. Yet, Israel neither fully withdrew from Gaza, nor ceased its attacks, nor did it allow the necessary aid into Gaza. The genocide continues. Israel had committed at least 265 violations of the agreement. During this time, the United Nations found that 81% of Gaza was controlled by the Israeli military. The first ceasefire ended in March 2025 and was only revived in October 2025. During the intervening period, Israel attacked Gaza once more without facing criticism from its major backers in Europe and the United States. Between October 10 and December 29, Israel had violated its terms 969 times. In March 2025, United Nations Relief and Works Agency estimated that 92% of all the housing in Gaza had been either destroyed or severely damaged. And therefore, the 21 lakh people surviving residents of Gaza have been living in the United Nations run displacement sites or in tents and temporary shelters. The United Nations Mine Action Service warned that unexploded Israeli bombs litter the rubble and that it would take experts 20 to 30 years to remove them. Heavy rains in Gaza this winter has flooded the tents, creating a serious crisis of acute respiratory infections, diarrhea and hepatitis. As per the UN report, at least 16 lakh people or 77% of the population are still facing high levels of acute food insecurity, including over 1 lakh children and 37,000 pregnant and breastfeeding women. By December 2025, Gaza's healthcare infrastructure remained severely degraded. More than 97% of Gaza's schools have been damaged. Over 7 lakh Palestinian children have lost the right to education. During this ceasefire, Israel has assassinated several important Palestinian political leaders and kept some of them still in Israeli jails. This is both a ceasefire and not a ceasefire. It is a relief that intensity of the bombing has decreased, but it is no relief for everyday life. Next item, comrades. Hamas commandos killed. The Al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of the Hamas, confirmed in a televised speech on 29th December that 5 of its military commanders were assassinated by Israel over the past several months in the Gaza Strip. The newly appointed spokesperson of the Al-Qassam urged those who may be concerned to restrain the Israeli occupation and force Israel to commit to the US brokered ceasefire deal in place. He further called for the disarming of Israel. He warned of the escalating Israeli assaults in the occupied West Bank, in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and against Palestinian prisoners. Moreover, he encouraged Palestinians and all people of consciousness over the globe to continue their solidarity with the people of Gaza on the legal, political, and popular levels. Comrades and friends, now we go to Sudan of Africa. The war in Sudan. The war in Sudan is not simply between two generals, but between two wings of a corporate or parasitic capitalist class fighting each other against the backdrop of a regional and global contest over Sudan's land, Sudan's natural resources, and geostrategic location on the Red Sea, argued Sudanese Communist Party leader. Over 1.5 lakh people have been killed in the over 2.5 years of this war that has made half the population into extreme levels of hunger. Even after more than 30 lakh people forced to flee amidst the war recently returned to their homes, over 93 lakh people remain displaced within Sudan, while an additional 43 lakh refugees have fled to neighboring countries. United States has been involved in Sudan for over half a century, starting with the military coup in 1858, only 2 years after independence. It was a part of the Cold War efforts to entrench itself in Sudan, to use its territory against Egypt, whose government, that led by Nasser, had tilted towards the Soviet Union. Nasser at that time had entered into an agreement with Russia to build the High Dam, a project which the US and the World Bank were eyeing. After Nasser died in 1870, the new Egyptian rulers, firmly on the side of the United States, joined its tripartite military exercises in northern Sudan. These exercises meant to train US troops in the hot desert conditions to ready them for a potential invasion in the Gulf, and these exercises continued for 10 years. Lastly, comrades, we go to Sri Lanka. Economists called for the suspension of Sri Lanka's debt. Over 800 people were either killed or missing, and over 14 lakhs were displaced during the recent cyclone Ditwa in Sri Lanka. The cyclone caused massive economic losses to the already struggling country, damaging crops and public infrastructure. The cyclone Ditwa caused damages worth over $700 crore, which is around 7% of the country's GDP. Sri Lanka currently has an external debt of around $900 crore. It defaulted on its repayment schedule in 2022 for the first time in its history, while in the 17th IMF sovereign debt restructuring agreement last year, creditors agreed to reduce the debt payment by 17%. Yet, the restructuring falls far short of the requirements of the Sri Lankan economy. The Institute of Political Economy, Sri Lanka, and the UK-based Debt Justice issued a joint statement demanding the IMF suspend Sri Lanka's debt repayment to tackle its prolonged economic crisis compounded by Cyclone Ritwa. The statement, signed by over 120 well-known economists from across the world, including Jayati Ghosh and Utsav Patnaik of India, Nobel Prize winner Joseph Stiglitz, and French economist Thomas Piketty. They asked the IMF to prioritize the welfare of people. Sri Lanka, which has been trying to overcome the prolonged effects of the 2019 economic crisis, still must dedicate 25% of its annual revenues for international debt servicing. The debt burden leaves little for the government to spend on crucial development sectors such as education, health, and social security. Thank you, comrades. Last salam. See you next.